Your vote is being rendered worthless by a single line drawn on a map. In 2024, the Supreme Court effectively greenlit the precise manipulation of your district's borders, deciding exactly who gets to hold power in your community. This isn't a theoretical debate. It is a calculated effort to strip your voice from the legislative process. These gerrymandered lines determine who represents you, who listens to your concerns, and who ultimately fights for your future, for your community in the halls of power. And believe me, the final point I am going to share is the one that most people are completely missing, even though it will dictate the next decade of American politics. Let us get into it. You wake up on a Tuesday morning and you look at your phone. You see a headline. The Supreme Court of the United States has just ruled by a 6-3 margin that your state's congressional map is unconstitutional. For those of us in Louisiana, this was not just a news alert. It was a gut punch. On April 29, 2026, the court handed down its decision in the case of Louisiana versus Callais. The majority, led by Justice Samuel Alito, decided that the second majority black congressional district in our state was a racial gerrymander. They claimed it was unconstitutional. They claimed that the attempt to comply with the Voting Rights Act of 1965 had gone too far. Think about that for a second. Think about the irony. The very act designed to protect the rights of minority voters was used as the weapon to strike down a map that finally allowed those voters to have a voice. We had fought for years to reach this point. We had lived through the data of the 2020 census, where black residents made up nearly 1/3 of our population, yet we were packed into a single district like we were an afterthought. In 2022, a federal district court actually looked at the facts and ruled that our original map violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. It was a win. It was the system working the way it is supposed to work. So by 2024, we finally enacted a remedial map that included a second majority black district. We finally had representation that looked like the people it served. But that progress is fragile. It is constantly being chipped away. If you are finding this breakdown helpful, hit subscribe. I am diving deep into these systemic issues every week, and the best part is coming up right after this. So, here we are. A group of non-black voters challenged the map, calling it a racial gerrymander, and the Supreme Court agreed. They used the rhetoric of colorblindness to ignore the reality of our history. You know the old saying, if you ignore history, you are doomed to repeat it. Well, we have seen this movie before. Literacy tests, poll taxes, redistricting that slices neighborhoods in half to dilute our influence. It all wears the mask of neutrality. But math is math. When you see that a third of the state is black, you expect to see that reality reflected in the halls of Congress. Instead, the court decided that the effort to create that fairness was illegal. They effectively raised the bar for what you have to prove to win a discrimination case. It is no longer enough to show the outcome is discriminatory. Now, you have to prove intentional discrimination, which is like asking someone to catch smoke with their bare hands. This is the second point, and it is crucial to understand. This isn't just about Louisiana. This is a signal to every other state in the union. If you want to dismantle minority-majority districts, the Supreme Court has just given you a new playbook. It is a roadmap for disenfranchisement. We are seeing the steady erosion of the Voting Rights Act, an erosion that has been happening ever since the Shelby County versus Holder decision in 2013. They are pulling the threads of the fabric of our democracy until it starts to unravel. All right, remember how I said I saved the most important part for last? This is the one that changes everything. We have been talking about congressional lines. We have been talking about congresspeople and federal maps. But the real impact of this ruling isn't just at the top of the ballot. It is everywhere. It is at your school board. It is at your city council. It is at the state legislative level. This ruling essentially creates a legal precedent that can be used to challenge fair representation at every single level of government. If you think it is hard to get a second district in Congress, imagine how hard it will be when the precedent used to fight that map is applied to your local school board where your kid's future is on the line. Chief Justice John Roberts famously referred to our 6th congressional district as a snake. He talked about how it stretched 200 miles to connect Baton Rouge, Lafayette, Alexandria, and Shreveport. He saw a snake. We saw a community. We saw people who share interests, who share struggles, and who deserve a voice that actually resonates with their lived experience. When the court decides that a community of interest is just a racial gerrymander, they are telling those people that their collective voice doesn't count. That is a devastating blow to our democracy. Once you see it this way, you can never unsee it. It is not just about a few lines on a map. It is about whether we believe that every citizen deserves to be heard. This fight has been going on for years. It will continue for years to come. The Voting Rights Act is a living promise, not just a relic of the 60s. We are not backing down because the stakes are too high. We are talking about the soul of this nation. And if we don't stand up for the integrity of our voting process now, we won't have a system left to fight for in another decade. So there you have it. We have looked at the reality of the Supreme Court's decision, the national warning it sends to every state, and the hidden danger it poses to local representation across the board. This is a pivotal moment in our history. What we do next, how we organize, and how we keep the pressure on our local and state representatives will determine whether we continue to move toward a more perfect union or slide backward into a past we should have outgrown. If you got value from this, please share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Subscribe so you don't miss the next conversation because we have a lot more to cover in the weeks ahead. Stay informed, stay active, and keep fighting for your voice. Because at the end of the day, your vote is the only tool you have to hold power accountable. Make sure you use it, because if you do not, someone else will use it against you. I will see you in the next one.